Hello everyone, Jeff here. So for the past couple weeks I've been working on a few prerequisite systems we need in place before we can get into the fishing gameplay. This involves things like a day-night cycle, which will determine when fish do and don't spawn, as well as things like being able to query on the server side the height of the train at a given point. This is important for making sure that the fish stay underwater and that they don't swim under the train and things like that. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at these. So one thing that I've been working on and having a lot of fun with is working on the sky and getting the day-night cycle working again. I've also got some of the mirage streams back and some of the stars and some of the effects. All of this needs more work. I'm going to continue refining all of this. In fact, I have quite a radically different plan for how the mirage streams are going to be rendered than using this kind of like wobbling texture effect that I'm using now. In fact, that's wobbling way too much. But anyway, to help get this moving along and make progress on this, I was having some trouble finding a good way to edit the sky colors and get kind of a real-time sense of what those colors were looking like. So I added this little window that I can bring up just with a hotkey here. And with it, I can not only control the colors, but I can also reload the file that specifies what colors are where and when. And it also updates this little kind of visual graph that shows where the sky colors are going to be and what time. So just by clicking and dragging this along, I can kind of scroll through the time, as you see here. I'll go through sunset, sunrise, midnight, that sort of thing. Now, as we get here, you'll notice also that the moon, or actually the planet Phelan, is looking quite a bit different in this version. I've been working on that, and I'm still not entirely happy with it, honestly. I don't think it doesn't capture what I want Phelan to look like. And I'd like it to have some of the blue that we saw in the MMO, not just be a blue planet, but to kind of have more of that particular color. So I'm still working on that. I'm going to kind of change the way the continents are laid out. I've got this kind of atmosphere effect. It could probably use a little bit more work. Same with this kind of nighttime city lights effect. It needs more work as well. Phelan is an inhabited planet. There's civilizations over there, but I don't think that'll ever come up so much in the game itself. It's just kind of an interesting point that the tapee can look up in the sky, see another planet, and see that there's lights and civilization on it as well. So just some quick notes on the sky. One, I did bring back this sort of glittery sky star effect. In fact, I actually recreated it a little bit because it was coming in a bit blurrier than we had it in the MMO, and I'm not sure why that was, but I did my best to kind of reconstruct that effect because I really like it. I've gotten comments from other members of the development team and outside the dev team that wanted me to bring back the interesting star effect. So I've done that, and we're going to keep that effect. Now, I do have plans to change how the mirage streams are rendered. The mirage streams are supposed to be a little bit more organized. It's actually supposed to be something like a planetary network. So that's going to happen at some point. I'll make that improvement and that change. There's still quite a bit of change that needs to be done just in the general colors, the way just about everything is rendering. The sun isn't rendering quite right. I've added this kind of sun disk thing with the bloom being separate, but it's not quite looking the way I want. I rather like it, other than it being a little bit perhaps too high on the ambient light still here. But as you can see, I have these little bars that help me just kind of adjust and tune those things. So we'll continue making progress on the sky and the lighting as the day-night cycle goes through. But overall, I'm happy to have some good tools that let me make it pretty easy to make changes and then reload the changes once I've made them. So another thing I've been working on is spawning fish, and I have this marker here under the water to help me test the spawning of fish. And if I click on it, it'll spawn a bunch of fish. Now they're not going to do anything. They're just going to kind of sit there. They don't have any behaviors yet. But the purpose of this is to test two things, or three things actually. To test the adding and removing of objects from the scene. This was something that wasn't working entirely on as far as the server is concerned, it could add and remove things, but it wasn't telling the client that objects had been added to the scene or removed. So I've sorted that out, so now we can dynamically add and remove things from the scene and the clients will automatically get updated. You just saw the fish hit their despawn time, so I have them set to about 30 seconds and they automatically despawn. So there's quite a bit that had to happen here as far as updating the save file and all that stuff, making sure that things didn't get saved after they're despawned, etc. So quite a bit of work there. The other side of this, that this is testing, the other thing, I'll click it a couple times here this time, is I've been working on a system for the server to know what the height of the train is at a given point. So you'll notice all these fish that were generated on the server side have positions just above the sea floor. And this is really important as we work on the fish to make sure that the fish don't spawn under the landscape or that they don't spawn on land, of course. So those are both really important to getting the fish spawning and moving around. And it's not terribly exciting to look at, but they're important features to have nonetheless. So that's it for what I have to show this week. Now, it was real tempting last night and this morning to continue working on this and get the fish moving around in some basic patterns. I decided against that, however, because as I started to do it, it became obvious it was just going to be kind of like throwaway code, and I hate to show things that give the impression that the project is further along than it is. Now, the next week, I'd like to really start thinking about creature behaviors and having the creature be able to change and adopt behavior based on what's going on around it. For example, if the player walks into the ocean, I would like to see the fish actually scatter. Likewise, I'd also like to work a little bit on the movement system. In the Antillia MMO, we had a very basic kind of packet-based movement system where you could kind of, if you watch the creatures like the Jadao, you could kind of see when it received its movement packet, it would kind of stop and then move and then stop. I'd like to get that a lot smoother this time around, so I'm going to put some more effort into that. So I'll keep you posted how that turns out, and I hope you have found this interesting. See you next time. A special thanks goes to this month's Patreon supporters. If you'd like to support the project, you can do so by visiting www.patreon.com/Antillia.